Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. I'm really excited to be with our special guest today. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, follow this guy. We'll have everything in the show notes. But Nick Mora, I should say, he started from being homeless in his past life, I guess you could say. In the last 8 months, he's become one of the top or the top 3 in manufactured and modular homes, which is a huge undertaking in 8 months, especially coming from actually being homeless. So tell us a little bit about your story, Nick. It sounds crazy and I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah. Hey, Angela, thanks for inviting me and allowing me to be on your show. I've listened to you religiously over the last few weeks and just amazed by a lot of your guests and what they bring to the table. So it's a huge undertaking to come in and speak amongst so many amazing guests that you've already had. So I appreciate that first and foremost. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity. So hopefully I give some information or at least maybe some background on who I am. That's enough to motivate or inspire someone to make a change in whatever they're doing. And even if I change the trajectory of somebody's path by 1%, I know that the end result of that will be much greater than where it's at today. So that's my inspiration, and that's usually what I live for right now. But yeah, so after, I guess you could say, several years of being involved in the street game, and what I mean by that is due to my past and where I came from and who I was real involved into traditional, what you hear on a lot of success, I guess you could say. Mine is a little bit more tried and true, but had to kind of survive on the streets. Drugs and all that kind of stuff was where I kind of came from, where I was. Well, because of that path that I chose for several years, it led me to finally getting it, legally incarcerated and some other stuff that took place in my last few years, which ultimately led to homelessness. I was I got out of the system. I lost my business, which was a roofing company, for several years. I lost all my vehicles. I had nowhere to live. I was on house arrest. So all these little things that happened about right around 18 months ago that I had to pull myself out of. And I was blessed for a friend from high school 20 years ago reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you used to be great at this and great at talking to people. And you other than the path you chose, you're good at working with people and helping people. I got a spot. We'd love to kind of fill you in with that spot." And I said, "Absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about it." So, yeah. And who knew, or who would have thought it was the mobile home and modular home industry, of all things, trailer parks, you know what I mean? And the connotation of it was, yeah, I used to sell a lot of stuff in those trailer parks. And it wasn't homes at that time where I came from. It was other endeavors that we shouldn't speak of on here, but you know what I'm getting at. And so when I thought about that, I kind of laughed. I was like, "Man, you want me to sell what, trailers to trailer parks?" They're like, "No, it's a different game now. It's an alternative that people are looking for with the housing crisis, the housing market." So I'll be honest, I came in hungry. I came in ready to put on the fight to get out of the situation that I was in. And I just started going at it. I did ask them for one favor, and that was to let me start from the bottom. So I didn't come in selling homes or land. I came in at the very, very bottom, which is just taking phone calls for 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. All I did was take phone calls and make cold calls, take phone calls and make cold calls. And I wanted to know, because I really wanted to understand what we were doing. I wanted to know the game from the bottom up. And I think that route really helped me, because in the last, like I said, we're going on 8 months now, I've become top 3 in the state of Texas, in the process of taking over Oklahoma, and just moving into New Mexico come next week. I've got a couple homes getting out there, so we're growing. And this is the crazy part, Angela, and this isn't to talk about myself, but it's really crazy because it's still kind of, it's hard for me to kind of, I guess you could say, believe right now. You kind of like pinch yourself in the morning, like, "Oh my God." But I was driving down, so I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I was driving down the highway yesterday, and one of 8 billboards that I now have statewide was me, Homes by Nick. And I was driving by and I got to see that. And in my mind, the first thing I thought about, I went from wanted signs a year ago to freeway signs and it's just really
Wow.
exciting. And it's just one of those things is everybody told me different, and I decided not to listen to that and make my own decisions. And when I did, so much has happened. And because of that, obviously, that's how you and I met. I was able to earn my invitation to the Audite Syndicate, and just getting to meet people like you, which are just continually leveling me up in everything that I do. So anyways, yeah, so it's just exciting. I guess you could say I kind of rised above what the situation is that I was in. I fought for it. Yes, ma'am. That's where we're at.
Totally. I mean, 10 hours a day, that's a lot of calls. And like,
Yes.
some people have a hard time making 10 calls a day to run a business. So to call for 10 hours a day, it's just like, and that's what starts to separate you from everyone else out there. And that's really, really, really important. So,
Yes, ma'am.
so on those days that you didn't feel like showing up and you didn't want to make those calls, and like, I just can't imagine, like, that's a lot of calls coming out of where you were at. Like, what motivates you and what gets you out of bed in the morning, then and even now?
Yes, that's a great question. It's a very deep question for me. A lot of people that I listen to, and a lot of talks that I heard, and just in general, a lot of people are chasing their dream, right? They're chasing the dream of success. They're chasing the dream of financial freedom and stats, or being the best at what they do, and all that stuff. For me, it's a little bit different, Angela. It's been a little bit different for several years, but more so over this last year during this transition in my life to where I'm at today, right? Because of what I've experienced, because of the life that I've come from, because of the situations that I don't want to say I fell into, but I allowed myself to become a part of it, and all that stuff that happened in my past. I've actually developed a different way, which continues to motivate me, continues to get me going, and continues to wake me up every morning, to be in the office before everybody else gets there, to stay later than everybody else stays, and to continue to go on days off, and just always working on my grind 100%. It's because I'm running, actually. I'm actually running from the nightmare that I had to experience at one point. So instead of chasing the dream, I'm actively running on a daily basis. I'm running away from the nightmare that I had to live for so many years, and that I lived through, just trying to survive, just trying to live, just trying to live this ridiculous world that I thought was great at the time, because I didn't know any better, right? Because I didn't open my eyes to reality of what life can really be and what you can undertake. So my motivation, what drives me and continues to drives me, is, yes, help other people. Yes, I want to do all that stuff. But in reality right now, where my head is at, is I'm truly just running as fast and as hard and as absolutely terrific as I can from the nightmare, at whatever cost it takes, in God's laws and man's laws, of course, now for once. But yeah, just running from that nightmare that I allowed myself to be a part of for so many years. It's just running from that. And what's crazy about that is, this is kind of how I guess you could say I've switched my mindset a little bit, is the nightmare runs so fast, right? And the nightmare is so much more encompassing of life. It can take over so fast. It can destroy so much. So I believe that the run from there is much stronger than the chase of a dream, because the chase is, I'll get there eventually. I'll get there. No. I have to run, because I'm one step away from being overcome again by this nightmare that was my life at one point. And so it absolutely drives me. I get that question asked a lot. I'm about to be 40 years old, and I run circles around guys that are half my age, in the same industry. And they wonder why. It's because I'll just tell them, so you haven't lived the nightmare that I have. You want the dream, you want the Instagram dream, the Facebook dream. I'll tell you what I want. And it has nothing to do with any of that. I'm running from something that was just god awful, and I don't wish it upon my worst enemies. So yeah, it's truly motivating, and it actually excites me. It sounds depressing, and it's not supposed to be at all. It's actually very exciting. It's very exciting to run so fast and kind of put your blinders on to what's happened in the past, where you were at, all that stuff, and just run straight focus to this, just running without looking back. I relate it back to I love watching Olympics, and I'm a big guy, so I actually never ran in my life, right? I rolled a lot. I'm more of a roller than a runner. But so I relate it to the Olympic runners though, right? To these track stars, and more so even to like Olympic swimmers and then horses and horse and buggies, right? They and that's where I get the blinders, and everybody's heard put the blinders on, right? It's a common speech, but you put those on because you're not looking back at what's chasing you. You're running so fast, and you're running so fast to be ahead of what's behind you, and to get away from what's behind you, that you can't focus on that. So it's really helped me in that realm as well, to just straight focus and running from what was behind me and trying to get away from it as fast as possible.
That makes sense. So looking back, what do you think started you down into that nightmare? And what could maybe help someone that might be starting in that path, that might be listening in, obviously listening in, they want to change. So maybe they're starting in some paths that aren't so healthy, to be able to stop that before they go in the nightmare.
Yeah, no, that's also a great question. And it's one of those things. So I go back to my youth, right? When I was kind of in middle school, going into high school, I didn't live a bad life. I had a great mother. I had an older sister and a younger brother. We had a great small family, right? It wasn't one of those things where we needed it to survive. I needed to be on the corner of the street to survive. I'm not a rap artist. I'm nothing like that. It's not one of those storylines, right? This was a path based off of the people that I associated with. And at that time, when I was in my youth, this is before Instagram and Facebook and all stuff. I think we had MySpace back then, maybe AOL chats. I don't know if anybody on here remembers any of that stuff, but that's the time frame I came around. But I was so busy chasing at that point. Here's what's crazy is I was so busy chasing the dream of having a nicer car for high school, having a nicer girl to date, having this and having that, that the pizza delivery just wasn't enough. I had to get into, I wanted more. I wanted more. I wanted to stand, I guess you could say I wanted to stand along the lines of some of the people that I hung out with at that time that had a little bit of money, that had this, but we just didn't have the means. I had a single mother. We didn't have the means to have all that. And back then I was so young and juvenile that I didn't realize that, you know, their family were helping them out and this and that. All I saw was they had more than I, and I needed it. And I didn't have any other route to get there except this route. So I saw this and I started going towards that. So I just say a lot of it has to do with association. And I actually heard one of your casts yesterday from you and a gentleman were on there. I can't recall his name right now, but you were talking about the sphere of influence. It's so true, especially in that age where you're still molding and you're still becoming who you're meant to be or who you're supposed to be. And you're still young because your mind is so moldable that any little thing can trigger you into thinking that's a great idea. You know what I mean? And the lack of consequences at that time as well. You just don't know what's happening. But it kind of started me down that path. And a lot of it has to do with, and I'll relate it to just one simple, I guess, line item is I was chasing to be like everybody around me. I wanted to be at that level, not looking at exactly what they had around them. So now in my older, as I'm elder and I got a little bit more wisdom, I would say, somewhat.
Careful, I'm the same age.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hard to say, but and you know, I guess we'll just call it wisdom that we have now. Is I look at it and now it's not so much what the people have, it's what their life is like behind closed doors, who they are in the dark, and I didn't know that back then, and that's kind of what stinks. And that's kind of one of my missions is nowadays is to teach these younger individuals, especially the 18 to 28-year-olds where it's really bad, it's one of the goals I have is to kind of help them understand that it's not what you see on Instagram. It's not what you see on Facebook. It's who are they behind the dark. When you turn that screen off, what's happening behind the scenes? That's who those people really are. And is that truly what you want to chase? Is that truly where you want to go? Because that can lead you down a dark path of lack of consequence and not knowing and doing whatever it takes. It's a horrible line item. In the right, it's got to be used in the right verbiage, right? But if doing whatever it takes, at what cost? You know what I mean? There's you still want to have morals and God's values and all those other stuff. But anyway, so that was it. And then once I was in that crowd or that type of crowd, and I tell this to everybody else is you can't ask them for help because they're like crabs in a bucket. Nobody wants you to get out because no one wants you to get ahead of where they're at. That's why you got to seek individuals like yourself, you know, like the Audite Syndicate, like a lot of individuals that you and I have the privilege of being involved with now, where they want to push you forward. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you're kids and they push you forward, and that's what you want. You know what I mean? But when you're in that kind of realm, and I share this with anybody that's listening, once you get involved with that type of demographic, with that type of, and I don't want to say it's type of people, because it's not a people, it's just a type of lifestyle. It's crabs in a bucket. Nobody wants you to succeed above them or ahead of them. And the minute you foresee that, you're in the wrong place. You need to get out and you need to run like I am. You need to run as fast as you can away from it, because once you're in, they'll continue to pull at your legs and keep pulling you in and pulling you in and pulling you until you're so deep, you're engulfed by it. You just can't get out of it. So that was the biggest thing is it was really me just wanting to obtain something without thinking of consequences.
So you were kind of, at that time, you were chasing the dream, and now we're running for the nightmare. Interesting.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
So, and sometimes maybe, I don't know, I didn't know where to go with that. I just kind of got that out of there, and I thought, man, that's kind of interesting. So sometimes chasing the dream can lead you to nightmare.
If you're not following the right path. Yeah. And if you're not looking at the right individuals. So that's the other thing too, and that's what's really hard about this day, Angela, is you have all these people chasing the dream based off Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and what you see on back then it was MTV for us. You know what I mean? And I go back to this little story. We had a pool in our backyard, and my mom said, "Hey, for the summer, I need you guys to paint this pool," right? Because it was full of rocks, so we cleaned it out. We're like, you know what? In high school, what's better than a pool, right? So she's like, if you clean it and fix it, you guys can use it all summer. Great. Well, this is back in MTV. You probably remember this, but MTV Cribs was huge back then. This just goes to how association kind of works. It's different now, though. But we got the pool fixed. We got it running. We painted it. We're at the very bottom of the deep end. We had our crew, our little group, our party group. We had our emblem right there at the middle, at the bottom. So we could be like MTV Cribs, the ghetto version, obviously. But so that's what we chased off of MTV. You know what I mean? It's the influence of those around you. And so what I share with everybody, especially now because Instagram and Facebook is so in your face. Look at me, look at me, look at me. You know what I mean? Anybody that goes to the gym, it's a booty picture or something like that. Like, look what I got. No, what you got, it's and so you chase that, right? And so you want to make sure that what you're chasing is something that you truly want, that you're passionate about, that you actually like. I didn't want to sell drugs, right? I just wanted the money. So when you take the dream that you're chasing, make sure that you're chasing it. And if you are, it's fine. But when you're chasing it, make sure that what you're doing to get there has value, that you're pulling people ahead with you. Because what I've realized is it's easier to stand up on shoulders than it is to be stuck underneath someone's foot, right? So if you can pull people with you, when the times get tough, you have shoulders to stand upon, because maybe you're not strong enough at that time. You have people to help carry you across the finish line in the times that you don't have the strength to do it yourself. If you're tearing people down and you're not doing the right thing, or you're not chasing the dream in the right path, you don't have anybody there. So when they fall, you fall, and it's kind of sort of. So I just kind of reiterate that. But yeah, at that point, I was chasing the dream. I was just chasing it the wrong way. I wasn't looking at what it took and how to get there the right way on a long-term level too. So yeah, eventually it fell apart.
So digging into, like, you got out of jail, and
Yes, ma'am.
you know, things happened really good for you, but a lot of people get out of jail and they go back to jail. So what happened in that situation, if you want to go there? What happened there that made you change your mind? So when you got out, you were actually different?
Yes. And so this is what's crazy. And I just had this conversation yesterday, Angelo, with some individuals, is the system is absolutely built. It's absolutely built to keep you in. Just like crabs in a bucket. Yeah, exactly. Crabs in a bucket. They want you out, but they don't give you the full opportunity to get out. So it's crazy, because when I got out, here I was homeless, 24/7 house arrest, 365, had ankle monitors on my ankle. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without getting police escort. Yet I was on 365, 24/7 house arrest, so I couldn't get a job or go to school because I wasn't allowed to. Yet I still had to pay $800 to $1,200 in fees every month for the services that they were holding me down with, for the monitor that they were forcing me to wear, for the escorts that they had me, and for all this. And I still have to find a right to check in once a week. I still have to pay for drug tests and this and that. So I had all this stuff, plus lawyers, plus fees, plus bonds to get out. So they have all this stacked upon you, but they don't give you the opportunity to go out and earn more. They don't give you the opportunity to go out and develop more. So you have to just truly just Okay, so the biggest thing is that's where everything's at. You have to get out of the victim mentality of that and be like, I'm a victim to this. How am I gonna? I can't survive this. I just give up. That's the one thing that I did different is I took that up. I took that situation and I realized the only way I'm gonna get out of this is if I dig myself out of it. So every single morning, kind of like I just talked about, yeah, I was running from this nightmare of going back in. Every morning, every day, I was thinking about how do I get out of this? How do I get away from this? How do I get so fast and so far ahead that no matter what they pile on me, I'll stand above it. I can stand through it. I can go through it. And you have to, the biggest thing is, and I think what pulls people back is first off, the lack of resources or the lack of availability to get those resources. So then they start to digress a little bit more and now they become victims to the system. And then once they're victims to the system, they become products of the system again, because they don't have it. They can't think of any other way out. So they start getting back into the old habits. And now depression starts to set in because now they're stuck back in where they were. And so they start getting back into the old habits of where they were. And so from those habits, they start to digress even further. And then they find themselves right back in the system and try to get back out of it. So what I always recommend, or what I recommend and what I've done, is I actively pursued ways to move ahead, move forward, and move out. And it sounds like a motivational speech, and I don't want it to be, but it's more of, I had to seek, they weren't going to hold me down. They weren't going to take control of my life. I was going to have complete control of my life. I go back to this one statement that I heard from a mentor of mine many years ago. And I didn't listen to it then, but I do now. And it's true because I actually experienced it. But every morning I looked into the mirror and I looked at the person. I was staring back at the person that I could be. But I was stuck being the person that I thought I was. And so it was like looking into the depths of hell. You know what I mean? And so I tell everybody this every morning, look in the mirror and just see, who can you be, not who were you? And use that to pull yourself out. You're not who they are. You're not the system. The system is, even though it's meant to keep you in because of tax dollars or whatever else, there's a lot to it, right? But you can overcome that. You can achieve that, and you just got to do it. And you have to realize that you're not too good for the small. To get away from it, I started washing cars. You know, I was washing cars. I was selling protein supplements from the room that I was in. Like all these little things that I was doing, so they were not going to beat me. They were not going to beat me. And that's all I can say is don't allow them to beat you, because once they beat you, they'll keep on beating you down, and then they'll beat you down after that. Don't let them beat you. Don't let the system hold you down, and just fight through it. It's a fight.
So that fight that you decided to have, where did that come from? Sounds like something in the past before that kind of started to come back. Like, why did you even start to decide to fight? Something was in the past that made you decide to come back.
I really got to give it to my mom. Here's a single mother of three children. I go back to the story of her, right? And this is probably the most inspiring story, and I hold on to it every day. It's actually, I got a whole arm dedicated to her. Still alive. Here's a woman who fought three strains of cancer, all within an 18-month period, and beat every single one of them flawlessly. I mean, this woman is a badass fighter, right? So I even have it tattooed on my arms, resilience and relentless, right? Those are the two things that I live by. But here's a mother of three, not a perfect kid by any means. I'm talking like my first visit to jail was 14 years old, stuff like that. Like it was a Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day. Yeah, I'm in jail. What were you doing? Stealing roses for you, you know? So I had the right intention, just the wrong method.
Wow, that's funny.
But here's this mother mother of three, single mother, who was putting a roof over her head. She was a teacher, working 2 jobs. And I would see her come in, and I would see her get back from work on the first day of the month, because that's when teachers would get paid. She had this notebook, kind of like I have, and she would pay all her bills. And she would pay all the bills. At the very end, she's like, my sister's money, my money, and my brother's money for lunch, right? And then a little bit of fun money, just a little bit of extra money for us to have, maybe a candy here or a Blockbuster night back in the day, stuff like that. And at the very bottom, it was always a $20. And she's like, my money. And so she would get a $20 bill, she would fold it up, and she'd put it in her pocket. That was her money for a month. That was her fun money. That was her life money, right? I just remember this so vividly. Is I would see her just struggle, and no matter what I brought to the table, wrecked her car, go to jail, throw these parties when she was gone, destroy the house, destroy the car. Like, I just put this woman through absolute hell, but she continued to fight. She never left my back. She never left my side. She always was there. The minute there was a call, It was never what did you do now? Blah, blah. It was, how do we get you out of this? And even though I knew she only had these $20 bills, she always found a way to get it out. And so I had this fighter mentality from my mother. And then, so that's the first stages of it, right? And then I see her get cancer, which actually absolutely devastated me. She gets her first straight of cancer, and she calls me. She says, "Hey, this is what's going on." I was like, "I'm on my way." She's like, "Son, you don't need to. I got this." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we actually have a saying, and I got it tattooed on my arm. And she said this, and this is the same saying. I'm glad I got this tattoo because this is what helped me get through the fight, right? You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have.
True.
And I've stood by that. I've lived by that and everything. Here I see a woman who was relentless and resilient in whatever came her way. She always found a way. She always won, and she always just fought through it. No matter how hard the struggle was, she always did it. And so she did that. And then the other piece of that is I go back to the palm tree, which I have on here too, which represents my mother. Is a palm tree is always bent, but never broken, no matter how hard the storm. And so it's these are those little things that I had in my mind. And I tell that to anybody else that's kind of going down that path or finds themselves stuck in a dark pit that they can't dig themselves out of. Think of the little things. Find something little that you can grab onto. There was a win in your life at one point. Something happened in your life at one point. You just got to find it, focus on that. And that's all I had when I was going through this. So to go back to your previous question, that's kind of really all it was, is I had one thing to focus on, the strength of my mother. And I had so much that I had to tattoo it on my arm so I could remind myself every single day.
Cool.
You're only as strong as you choose to be today. You're bent but never broken. They can't break you, Nick. They can't break you. And so I've lived by that. And then last but not least is the spiritual side of it, which is Hebrews 11:1. Sight in the unseen, faith in the unseen. Have faith in what you cannot see yet, because you're continuing to fight for it. And that's kind of what's driven everything up to this day.
Wow, that's so good. I know we could go on and on for sure. This is so good, Nick. But I want to end with 3 final questions, and also anything you want to leave the listeners with. So 3 final questions. Number 1, someone's looking for their purpose. What's one sentence you would say that could help them find that?
One saying that they could help them find their purpose. This is a huge one for me. I go into a whole talk about it. Seek what makes your heart sing. That's it. It's just seek what makes your heart sing. And it might not, to dive a little deep, it might not be the success, and it might not be the money, it might not be this, but what makes your heart sing? What are you doing that makes your heart feel good? Is it shaking someone's hand and telling them, "Hey, have a good day," and seeing them smile? Well, then you just found your purpose. It's to talk to people. It's to share with people. It's to smile with people. That could lead you down the path of talking like you do right now, sharing these great stories of unseen heroes, right? Stuff like that. Is it the contract? Is it the sale? Do you build something and it just makes you feel so good inside? You're building something. Okay, great. How do you turn that into your purpose? What can you build? Build a cathedral, build a church, build a building. What can you build that'll bring purpose to you? It's just what makes your heart sing would be the sentence I give that.
That's good. I like that one. Number 2 is, what is your favorite quote, at least at this moment, and why?
I think I gave it away already. I'm going to use it again. It's that one from my mother. I've lived by it, absolutely lived by it. So I'll repeat it again because it means so much to me. And I actually love to say it. So I'll say it all day if I could.
Cool.
So good. But you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. My mother.
Love that. So good. And number 3, what is one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Resilience. I lived a life of resilience. No matter what you threw, no matter what came my way, no matter what took place, no matter what happened, stayed resilient through it and just continue to fight. It makes me
I'm sure that'll be there.
Kind of passionate, actually.
And so if you run into someone in a coffee shop and they're like, "Nick, man, I listened to the podcast, and what's one more thing that maybe you could give them that would help them that we haven't touched on today?"
Your truest potential you haven't even seen yet. Wake up tomorrow morning and look in the mirror and say, "Thank you for yesterday. What are we doing today?" The truest potential is still ahead of you. And if you continue to fight after what's to come rather than what you've done, you'll continue to be better, and you'll continue to strive to be the best version of yourself on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, so good. I'm fired up. I'm ready to face the day. That's really good.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much for Nick for being on. As I said at the beginning, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. This is how we get the word out. And together we can change one starfish or one person's life at a time. And together we can change the world. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Angela. It was awesome. Thank you.